It is easy to be derisory at the following past descriptions of sea serpents. This is being somewhat unjust, one thinks. We all like a good mystery after all, and the odd tall tale. Man has instinctively looked for higher beings. Once it was a sole preserve and the realm of religion. Today it's expanded to extraterrestrials. YouTube is positively littered with wacky UFO stories, all with as much real evidence as the sightings I'm about to outline. That's to say, none, just better graphics. Nor has the hunt for mythical or cryptoid creatures been tempered by the advent of infrared cameras, helicopters and LiDAR scanners. Entertainment programs are placed on the same channel as reruns of David Attenborough. As you will shortly find out, mention mythical creatures in the late 19th century, you could be accused of being pissed. Mass hysteria isn't a bygone phenomenon reserved for sightings of the Virgin Mary. Leviathans lurking in the depths of the local duck pond. Had it been 1906 and you broadcast your belief that your local river was a real person, you would, in somewhat short order, be dragged off to the local mental institution. It's therefore a bit rich to accuse your great-grandparents as being dullards. 130 years later, mankind still doesn't have the majesty of the oceans that comprise 70% of the planet. Mysterious unknown creatures are being discovered regularly, like the one on this high-tech Polaroid photo. By the way, if I had more subscribers, I might be able to afford a better video maker rather than the free one I currently use. This previously unknown creature, a luminous sea slug, was discovered 3,500 metres below the surface of the Bounty Trough in November 2024. The find is so new, the marine biologists have yet to give it a proper name. As at producing this video, it's simply called The Thing. And where is the Bounty Trough? The Bounty Trough is named after the famous mutiny. It's on the east coast of New Zealand. If you can approximate the Chathams, you are on the money. The ocean in that area drops to around 5,000 metres. That's chicken feed. On average, the Pacific Ocean is twice the depth of every other. The Challenger Deep area of the Mariana Trench goes down 11 kilometres. Off the coast of Hawaii is located the world's tallest mountain, Mauna Kea. You heard me right. Not the one bordering Nepal and Tibet. Terrestrial chimps like you and me came up with the arbitrary decision to decide to measure the height of things based on sea level because it was easy and consistent, not because it entirely makes sense when vertical height from where it's attached to the earth is a far truer measuring stick. Long thought dead creatures, long in this case being 66 million years, have been dragged from the depths to the surprise of biologists. Last but not least, before you poke the borax at these Edwardian testimonies, last year, and Karen White, pictured, was convicted of attacking women, sentenced and imprisoned in a woman's prison. I can't imagine his crimes would be greeted the same a century ago. Our forebears could spot a 5 o'clock shadow from 36 seas. Lots to cover here, into it. Just one thing to notice, these sightings do appear to come in batches, and I've been rather selective. Rest assured, the folk back then were just as familiar with basking sharks, sperm whales and gigantic squid as we are today, and seamen, arguably, they were far more knowledgeable when it came to critters. Irrespective, the press wasn't afraid to indicate that sailors see things. It's 1891 when the crew on the bridge of the sturdy workhorse, the Roto Mahana, which translate broadly as warm lake or round sun, take your pick, eyeballed a 100-foot or 30-metre long serpent rising and falling a considerable 30 to 40 feet from the surface. The crew also went on to describe the upper side as being dark and the belly white, which fits in with the markings on a terrestrial snake. The crew postulated a recent earthquake had awakened it from the depths. Other more sceptical origins were the logs or an optical illusion. The less charitable put the whole thing down to
bad whiskey.
A year later, and the headline read Curious Sea Monster, Captain Zubritsky tried harpooning his sea monster along the North Auckland coast. Theorised his cargo had attracted its attention. In case you were wondering about the name Zubritsky, the man was the first known Pole in New Zealand. A larger-than-life figure, he went on to single-handedly increase the Polish population in his new homeland. He had 9 children. One of those was his son, who also witnessed what was dubbed
the poor knight's Serpent.
At the other end of the country, remembering the mockery of the crew of the Rotobahana and what they were subjected to, 2 officers told the papers, only on the basis their names and vessel wouldn't be put in print, they too had spotted the very creature on their way into Timaru. For months there have been reports from the top of the South Island of what was termed to be a marine monster, an Inquisitive one at that. The top man in the land, based in Wellington, was summoned to identify it. We can be sure Sir James Hector was correct in stating it was a beluga, a small white whale that normally plies the Arctic waters. The surname Hector will be familiar to many of you when I mention Hector's Dolphins, Hector's Observatory, the town of Hector. The multi-talented James Hector was a surgeon, a geologist and naturalist. Before coming to New Zealand, he went on the Palliser expedition across uncharted lands in Western Australia. And to Canadians, this 4-person 3-year expedition in the late 1850s was on par with the Australian Burke and Wills. You can bet your boots, Hector knew not just his dolphins, whales similarly. There's a species of them named after him as well. Snails and flowers to boot. 1906, and we're 1,000 kilometres north of Auckland, the Kermadecs, they were annexed by New Zealand in 1887, primarily to get rid of the self-inflicted Robinson Crusoe-like Englishman, Thomas Bell, who was claiming it for himself. I will do a video on this black belt eccentric at some stage. This massive gurnet-faced creature was sighted twice on 2 differing occasions. 1909, looking through his binoculars, the second mate on board this vessel, the Monowai, was alarmed to see what looked like rocks off at the starboard side when they were well off the coast of Gisborne. His sighting went from concern to bemusement and then to horror as he realised what he was seeing was moving. The lumbering 15 to 20 foot long beast was plunging and then resurfacing. At a distance it looked to have a snout. He was lambasted for his troubles. Cue another rendition of What Should We Do with the Drunken Sailor. 1911, a massive 200-foot long crocodile-headed sea snake sidewind itself alongside a vessel travelling east across the Trans-Tasman, Sydney to Auckland. 1913, go to the other side of the North Island, and more giant sea snakes reported by the captain and chief officer of the steamship Rosamond, pictured. The similar reports describe a marine creature resembling a snake, but with a square head, length variously between 50 to 80 foot. The oceans surrounding New Zealand were positively awash with sea serpents, in a biblical sense. Now, this sighting of Stewart Island in the late 20s is rather intriguing, and take the dimensions to start with. A 16-foot long and only marginally less wide. One of the fishermen eyeballing it was a Norwegian. He was able to identify it from his travel as a devilfish, common to Caribbean waters. And this picture is what one looks like. I have never been to the West Indies, but I can attest from personal experience the water off Stewart Island, Port William, is a brisk 15 degrees according to my testicles. Google tells me the Caribbean waters are around 10 degrees warmer, so it's got to be one bloody cold devilfish, if that's what it was. Skipping into the 30s and spitting distance to Port Chalmers, Dunedin, a 30-foot snake-like beast with the girth of a telephone pole is observed hunting unsuspecting seabirds floating in Deborah Bay. Drawing a very, very, very long bow, the team at the Otago Times newspapers went to search for previous reports in the region. Finding none, they theorised, peculiarly, it was likely to have come from the east coast of the North Island. Sea monsters of this kind weren't normal for this stretch, and to not panic. Speaking about panicking, in Australia, specifically Sydney in 1930, mass reports of menacing strange sea creatures led to swimming bans. Aircraft were sent skyward to track and locate. Those all turned out to be logs encrusted with barnacles. In the same year, 1934, residents of Lake George, New York, decided to breathe life into an historic newspaper hoax, reinvent the spectre. George, the long-dead plesiosaur, was roaming in the lake, hoping they could benefit from inquisitive tourists in the same fashion to Loch Ness. If only they had have made a better rendition, they may have seen some success. To close us out, we're back at the top of the South Island again. What the press dubbed as
The Pelorus Sound's monster.
Looking at that paper headline, you're probably left wondering what is the difference between a traditional and untraditional sea serpent. Me too. Maybe I could venture a lesser known Hector's whale. This report, it sparked others which appeared to rule out marine whales possibly be attracted into your net by liberal spreading of Tux biscuits? ? As I close us out, and cheers for getting this far into it, despite New Zealand having a large coastline, none of these creatures managed to make it into the legendary category. They were headlines one week and forgotten the next, which is, well, whilst predictable, rather sad. They are great for tourism. Lest we forget, they're still packing them in at Hobbit Town. I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.